all taking your time out to join this event tonight. My name is Simon Yu, one of the co-founder of PropTech Institute, PTI, and the host. I'll be sharing with you the rundown for tonight. But first off, PTI is very proud to be hosting tonight's event alongside with our partners, Accelerate and Eaton Club. We're also very excited to have our speakers, Gary, founder of Realinflo, and Vishalsai, founder of MyPropty. Together, they will share their thoughts on how technology is driving changes to the real estate industry now and in the near future. Now, we'll begin with our short introduction from representatives of PTI, Accelerate, and Eaton Club. And our speakers will then take over the floor into two sessions. There will be a 10 to 15 minutes Q&A session at around 7:20 p.m. with a closing remarks by Darren Wong of PTI at around 7:30 p.m. Without further ado, let me now pass the floor to Alicia Mao for our introductions.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. My name is Alicia, and I'm the president and co-founder of PropTech Institute. Hong Kong has one of the world's most mature and sophisticated real estate markets. This is evident to many in the global community, as well as, of course, to us who live and work in Hong Kong. At the same time, we live in a digital age where technology is transforming our lives in new ways every single day. But what's happening between property and technology? To date, other than a few pioneering real estate corporations, overall, the local real estate industry's adoption of technology is still at very early stages. This is despite both the real estate and tech communities calling for more collaboration. This is where PropTech Institute comes in. PropTech Institute is the first nonprofit organization in Hong Kong dedicated to promoting property technology, PropTech. We seek to be the bridge between two of the biggest and most important industries that touches our daily lives, real estate and technology, and uniting these two giants to make a positive and real impact to our economy and society. Since our inception, PropTech Institute has been at the forefront of the development of PropTech, being the voice of the community, education hub, as well as the platform for PropTech startups, real estate developers, investors, academia, and government institutions to connect. We at PropTech Institute firmly believe that is the future of real estate, and that PropTech will make this basic human need, a shelter over our heads, more sustainable, efficient, and accessible. Before we proceed with the rest of the rundown, I would like to thank our two partners this evening, Accelerate, a leading education platform in technology with over 7,000 alumni, and Eaton Club, a premium flexible workspace with locations across Hong Kong. We are also delighted to announce that Eaton Club and PropTech Institute has just entered into a strategic partnership agreement, whereby Eaton Club is our exclusive flexible workspace event venue sponsor. Tonight, we have close to 130 people registered for this event. On behalf of the whole team at PropTech Institute, we would like to thank you for the immense support and interest in us and PropTech. I hope you enjoyed tonight's event and have some interesting key takeaways. Now, may I hand you over to Accelerate and Eaton Club, where they will share more about who they are and what they do. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aka from Accelerate. So thank you, PTI, for inviting us to have this event together. So Accelerate is an tech company. Those who are looking for a career change to tech industry, we provide professional training to individuals or corporates on software engineering, data science, user experience, and digital marketing, etc. So we are currently offering two types of learning. One is full-time immersive that prepares students from zero to job ready in 4 months. Or another one is part-time. So it's more for upskilling purposes. Unlike other online learning, they are more like video courses. Our training are more interactive, project-based, and also outcome-focused, because we believe that that is the most effective way of learning a new skill. So thank you again. I wish you enjoy this event tonight. Thank you.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you all. I'm Wendy, head of Eaton Club. Today I'm glad to partner with PropTech and Accelerator to host this event. Let me briefly introduce a bit about Eaton Club. Eaton Club is a premium flexible workspace provider in Hong Kong. We have 3 locations in Hong Kong. The first one is Central, the Champion Tower. We have 2 floors, the 10th floor and 5th floor. And the second one is our Mong Kok Center in Langham Place. And here where you are, our 4th center is our newest center, is in Great Eagle Center. We provide a hybrid of product from service office, club membership, and event space. And we can provide a one-stop service to the client, from the workspace to the premium furniture and the professional service, customer service to the client, and up to the IT support. You just name it, we can provide all these facilities and service to the client. Eaton Club, our vision is to enable a sustainable growth in terms of business, people, and community, which is in alignment with our Great Eagle Group. We strive to provide a reliable and sustainable platform to all like-minded people to gather together, to exchange their idea. Like today, we hosted events so people can interact and exchange idea. That's our whole purpose. So we have built our Eden Club community with 4 core main pillars. The first one is the sustainability. The second one is the art and culture. The third one is wellness. And the 4th one is technology, which is today the whole host of the purpose of having this event in order to gather all the like-minded people together. So I pass on the time to Alicia for the event. Thank you.
Thank you both. Now let me introduce to you the first speaker of this evening, Gary, fellow co-founder of PropTech Institutes and CEO and co-founder of Realinflo. Hi, Gary.
Hi, Alicia.
Well, so for those who don't know who you are and what you do, please could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Gary, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Realinflo. We are building a real estate data analytics platform for the Asia Pacific region. And I'm also proud to say I'm one of the co-founding members of PTI. A bit about my background. I'm from the UK. I've been in Hong Kong almost 13 years now. I did an exchange program at HKUST. Also did my master's in Hong Kong U. And so I've been here for quite a while. And I've also lived short periods both in Kenya and Beijing.
Wow, that's really cool. So where did you get the idea for Realinflo, and what were the first steps that you took to get it off the ground?
Yeah, so actually, it was just purely out of like sheer frustration. So I began my career in Swire Properties in Hong Kong, where I basically worked in acquisitions, asset management, even in building management. And then after a short stint in aviation, I worked in Colliers International as a chartered valuation surveyor. So this was for 6 years. I was based in Hong Kong, but doing a lot of projects in mainland China, Japan, Indonesia, even in the Middle East. And I took like several steps back, when I was working in Swire in Colliers, and if I looked at the workflow processes, whether you're an investment analyst or you're a valuer or you're an agent, and we were spending like 70 to 80% of our time, on projects like doing simple things like data collection, analyzing data. And, I just thought this is like a huge waste. And one day I was just, having beer with a mate in another company, and I just come back from Malaysia, he just come back from Malaysia, and we basically both spent a week on the ground looking for like the same comparable transactions in KL. And a few days later, I was doing another valuation, and I was like modeling up some comparables again in actually one city gate in Tongcheng, and then I spent like a few hours to look over building plans and all that stuff, and I just turned around to say hi to my colleague, and then he was doing exactly the same thing. And I just thought, like, if we're repeating all this kind of grunt work, in the industry, and if you repeat this across, not just my team, but department, company at the industry-wide level, there's just so much, kind of wastage in terms of cost and like lost value creation opportunity. So this is really where the idea come about. I thought there must be a way that we can build like a comprehensive data platform for Asia. So so I drawn up a plan, and I was on a friend's wedding actually, and we were coming back from an island, and then ended up talking to another friend. Like, I didn't know what he did, but it turns out he built like databases for like banks and Fortune 500 companies. And I was like, I have this really cool idea. It's going to change real estate. So when we got back to Hong Kong, we just grabbed a notebook, drawn up a plan. And then when I was in Colliers, they were very supportive. So I we built out a prototype, kept iterating on it. And then, eventually it took a leap of faith, like after much thought, and said, okay, I'm gonna quit and do this full time. So we turned a Hong Kong-sized apartment into, the Realinflo headquarters in Kowloon, and just built it out until we got our first clients.
Oh, wow, I see. So having talked about the large inefficiencies in the industry, how do you view the current state of the real estate market with regards to data?
Yeah, so for me, I view the real estate industry currently like a bit like the financial industry back in the 1980s and 1990s. And this is crazy because in Hong Kong, a lot of buildings actually worth more than companies themselves. There's a real lack of data infrastructure. Lots of data siloed. You can't even access some data, and there's no real way to use data. Quite to make simple, choices like, okay, should I buy this building? Should I convert this building? Should I change my tenancy mix? So say you're an investor looking to buy one IFC in Central, for example, you need information such as what's the transaction history, the ownership, who the current tenants, floor areas, and so on. And this data is like very, very hard to find. And you also need alternate data around that building. For example, other buildings in the area. You might want to know the footfall of the shopping mall, for example. You might want to know, other details, and also, on a sub-market and market level. And getting access to this data, even in Hong Kong, is very difficult. As we know, we have the 3 tiers of development control here, and a lot of the data, you have to go to multiple different departments. They're built on very old systems, and there's no way to plug into this, plug into the data. So this is why we created Realinflo, essentially to take vast amounts of unstructured data, clean it up, standardize it, and then put it into a platform where you can automate your workflows and say use predictive analytics in future to make changes in your company.
Oh, I see. Wow, that sounds like a lot of data to process. Can you tell us an example of how real estate data is hard to process?
Yeah, so if we go back to the financial industry, financial services industry again, in financial services, you have something like what's called the ISIN number. So say for any financial security, you can identify that by that code essentially, and then you can also attach say alternate data to that code, and these securities are like publicly traded on a standardized exchange, and there's also platforms like Bloomberg, in financial services industry. So when we think of property or real estate, it's very hard to even say, okay, how do I get a unique identifier, right? So if you want to tie multiple data sources to property, how do we classify that piece of real estate? If we say it's the lot could, have several buildings. If we have a building, it could cover several lots. And then if we use a street address, in our data platform for some buildings, we have 20 different addresses for, one building. When you get to markets like Tokyo, it can become even more complex. So in Hong Kong, you might have, for example, you might classify the street address by, street address by, street X or street Y, or classify it by, the access on the lower floors or the upper floors. So in real estate, we don't currently have this unique identifier, which is immutable, such as, the ISIN code. So we need to find a way to string together all of this different data points.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what are some of the data sources that you use for Realinflo?
Yeah, so for us, we take data from multiple public data sets, multiple public data sources. We've also launched the first real estate data exchange in Asia. And then we also have data from strategic partnerships. So we tie this all together, and we really focus on data that you can't find in other platforms. And I think most importantly, to drive transformation in real estate, we need to work on data standards. And also, that is, for us, we also work with RICS. So, to roll out international standards, such as IPMS around area measurements.
Okay. So knowing one of your main user groups is real estate agents, do you think they're going to exist in the future?
I think this is one of the questions that we get most commonly asked, especially when we talk about data, and then also when we talk about tech and what will be the first victims of tech, or what will be the first changes. And I think if we look at different industries such as travel agents, for example, if we look at the agency problem where you have like an intermediary, such as like a travel agent, and then we look to see what happens, say, with online travel agents, there's a information asymmetry basically got lowered in the industry. And if you use Skyscanner now, you can basically book faster, you can book cheaper, and you can also book it maybe a better place to stay, right? You didn't know that airline or that hotel existed before. So in Hong Kong, probably the closest we had to that before was you could go to the bank center, Hong Kong, and go to all the different travel agents and stuff. And then I think the second reason for the travel industry was that the risk of making the wrong choice the consequences are a lot less. For example, if you book the wrong hotel or you book the wrong dates, it's not a disaster, right? You can just rebook or get a refund at the click of a button. So, but when we go back to real estate, thinking of estate agents and agents in the industry, if you're looking for new premises, say for your APAC headquarters, or you're even looking to buy a home, the risk or the consequence of a bad choice is a lot higher. Maybe it impacts your business operations in Asia. And then also, or you got to live in that home for 10, 20 years, right? You probably go through a lot of changes, you're going to have kids and stuff. So the consequences are a lot bigger. I think as the information asymmetry also, decreases in real estate, I think the importance of agents will increase. They will become more like, kind of wealth advisors for real estate. And I don't think they will go anywhere soon.
Okay. So how do you think the real industry will look like in the next 10 to 15 years?
Yeah, so I think there's going to be a huge change in the way the industry works and the way we do things. If we're at a future PTI event, maybe in 2035, I think we'll be looking back to today and, just thinking about how different, why were we doing things like this? Why are we still pulling data from, these multiple siloed data sources and stuff? But I don't think this change will happen overnight. It will happen slowly. The pace of the industry is just slower because, to turn around, you've got technology, serving tenants, the turnover of the tenants is going to take years. And, if you sell the whole stock in the industry, it's going to take even more years, right? So liquidity is lower, assets are held for a long time. And then also, the industry in general is just a bit more risk averse. But saying that, there will probably be some innovation in spaces. We've got COVID at the moment, so there's innovations being done around that. And then maybe in some markets, for example, where they've got oversupply of retail malls, there might be some innovations to make creative spaces out of that. But thinking about data, I think now companies, whatever they're doing, if they think about using their data more efficiently, to think about what they can do with their data, they can probably bring forward, 5 to 10 years their plans. And as we've seen in other industries, if you don't capitalize on that, you'll be left behind, so to say.
Oh, I see. Well, thank you so much, Gary, for sharing. I hope the audience have learned more about what Gary does, some of the pain points relating to data in the real estate markets, as well as your vision of how the future of real estate would look like. Thank you.
Thanks, Alicia. Thanks.
Now, may I introduce to you the second speaker of this evening, Vish, fellow co-founder of PropTech Institute and CEO and founder of MyPropty. Vish will share about his story of how he started his PropTech business, and through that, give us some insights of the current PropTech landscape and what are the challenges in the real estate market that potential PropTech entrepreneurs can seek to tackle.
All right. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good evening so far. My name is Vishalsai. I'm founder of MyPropty, and thanks, Alicia, for introducing me just now. I would also like to thank Eaton Club, Accelerate, and PropTech Institute for hosting this event today. So today, I'm going to share with you my journey in real estate. Just to give you a little bit of an idea, my background is actually very tech focused. So my degrees are in computer science and electrical computer engineering. And I also worked in the Bay Area as a software engineer for a few years. So I worked at Uber and I worked at Cisco, where I worked on IoT Wi-Fi devices for multinational corporations. Around 4 years ago, I moved to Hong Kong and I got involved in the real estate space here. And since coming to Hong Kong, I've worked with a digital property agency and a co-living company. And I also got a property agent license. All of this was in an attempt to really understand how the industry works, right from doing the manual work on a regular basis. So why PropTech? As a tech person, you can kind of get into a lot of different industries, fintech, fashion tech. For me, the idea to conceptualize just PropTech in general came from the only place you could imagine. I was on Wyndham Street and I was grabbing lunch and I saw there was one restaurant that had a huge long line, and right next to it was a bar, Tonic. It's not there anymore. But this bar basically had a bunch of tables, a bunch of chairs, but it was completely unutilized. So that's where the first interest in PropTech came when I was visiting Hong Kong. And I guess I was thinking, is there a way to utilize space more in Hong Kong? So I moved to Hong Kong 4 years ago. As I mentioned, I did a few different roles. And then I started MyPropty around 2 years ago. So what MyPropty does is we work with landlords, usually people that have between 3 to 100 properties. These are family offices, high net worth individuals, small real estate funds, or just families that have invested in a little bit of real estate on the side. And they are looking for a platform to digitize and streamline their property management. And another thing is that these small to medium landlords also don't really have an understanding of how the market is changing. I think it's very clear in the last year, the whole market has changed completely. And for these small landlords, they've kind of been left in the dark because they don't have data or insights to actually make changes accordingly. So I want to tell you a little bit about the property market landscape. And so this actually is my understanding of it. Completely nil. I started with the concept that rent is expensive. If you agree with me, feel free to put down a note on Zoom. But that was kind of the limit to my understanding of property in Hong Kong. So I went in a little bit deeper and looked at the relationship between tenants and landlords. Was there something that could be done to streamline how landlords and tenants communicate with each other? So again, looking into this a little bit more, I started looking into the brokerage space. So at this point, I would walk around to small mom and pop brokerages, knock on the door. 90% of them told me to leave. Who are you asking me all these random questions? But the 10% actually let me in, let me sit down for 5 to 10 minutes, ask them a bunch of questions. And it really helped me understand the thought process of how brokers actually operate and some of the challenges that they face. And in terms of software tools available to these brokers, there are listing platforms. Examples are 28 House, Spacious. There are CRM tools. Some of the local ones are Raptor. There is Unicorn. And there are basically a lot of these services that are made available to brokers to streamline their operations. But again, with these listing platforms, there tends to be a conflict of interest between brokers and tenants because the brokers are your customers. They are the ones that are paying the money to list out put up their listings, but the tenants are the ones that are actually driving traffic to your site. So as a person that has set up a listing platform, you're constantly dealing with this dilemma of how do you prioritize? Do you prioritize tenant user experience to drive up traffic? Or do you prioritize like pushing up listings for agents that pay a higher price? And there's this constant dilemma that they face. So going on further, I started realizing there's a lot more other players in this industry. There are refinancing companies. There's a startup called Roots that's actually doing some work here in Hong Kong. There are decorators, repair vendors. So again, there are companies like Hong Kong Decoman, Co-Deco. And then there are home services. So there's a startup called Butler that's out in the market now. There's Hello Toby, there's OK Sir. So there are a lot of these, there are actually quite a few different startups that are already present in the Hong Kong space. But again, my understanding of this kind of developed over a period of time of speaking to several different people. Moving along, I started realizing even more different industries. There are tenancy management companies, surveyors, banks, property developers, and building and facility management companies. There's actually a building management company that I came across recently. What they do is they build software to improve your utilization of your HVAC systems. So heating, ventilation, air conditioning, so that they can potentially predict when your maintenance needs to happen in order to reduce your operating costs. They are called Carno Innovations. And again, this is just a few more examples of different companies in the landscape. We've got people that work on fundraising and real estate analysts. We've got architects, people in city planning and smart cities, construction companies. There's a startup called Rospect, I believe, and they're working in that space, and car parks. There is Parking B&B is actually doing some very interesting work in the car park space right now. So as you can see, as a total outsider, if you're looking, if you don't have a background in real estate and you're looking to get into the property space, there's actually a lot of room for you to be a part of it and get involved. So now looking at the whole market landscape, going back to my initial thought process and my initial interest, I decided to focus on the tenancy management side of the business. So with this, as a tenancy manager and as a landlord, again, you have to balance interest between the tenancy manager and the landlord. I'll give you a couple of examples. In the case of leasing, a tenancy manager will typically want to own that listing. Whenever there's a renewal, whenever they have to go find a tenant, they want to be responsible. If you're going to be giving them the responsibility to manage their listing, they also want to get the commission at the end of the day. Whereas for the landlord, it's actually in their interest to send it out to as many agents as possible, potentially, so that they can get more marketing in the market. Similarly, in the context of repairs, that like handyman work that needs to be done for apartments, for a tenancy manager, you want a tenant management portal. The tenant can log their repair request whenever they need it, and you can effectively improve the efficiency quite significantly. Whereas if you actually speak to landlords, most of them don't really like that concept. The reason being is that the easier it is for a tenant to submit a maintenance request, the more maintenance requests they're going to be getting, and it's just going to drive up a lot of cost for these landlords. And several of them, like, it just becomes trivial. Clean my ACs, my door handle is squeaking a little bit. Can you send someone? It's going to cost you another $500 to $1,000. Like, so it's in all these different roles. You always have to balance these different stakeholders, and that's where I came in and looked at this model, and I was like, can we build a more landlord-focused product? Basically, give them the benefits of these insights in the market that tenancy managers have, but do it so that the landlord has full control over who has access to their data. Can they get analytics themselves? And can they get relevant insights regarding related to their property portfolio? So now I want to go into a little bit in terms of the data insights that we are working on with MyPropty. Actually, some of the challenges in the context of big data actually applies to a lot of different industries. But the examples that I'll share with you are examples that I've experienced in my role working with landlords. So there are three basic pillars, and you need a balance of all three to actually do a really good job and come up with good insights. The kind of insights that I'm referring to that we work on is telling landlords stuff like, what are your occupancies are? What are the chances that your tenant might default and leave your unit, so that maybe you might have a head start? Can we build up stronger relationships with your tenants so that instead of giving them notifying us 1 month ahead of time right before they leave, they maybe give us a 2 to 3 month head start in terms of finding potential replacement tenants. So these are the kind of insights that we are working on for landlords. Can we give them benchmarks in terms of repairs? Most landlords, when they go out and they call a SIFU, they have no idea what they might have some pricing, but they don't know what the market is like. They don't know if their personal vendor that they've been using for many, many years has significantly hiked up their prices. And there's no real activity in terms of monitoring this kind of information. And that's where we come in. We try to help them analyze this data and see if they can make more efficient decisions. So now going into the three challenges, I just want to go over it pretty quickly. With the first thing is volume. You need a large amount of data to actually get some insights. In the context, just for the sake of simplicity, I'll go into like transaction and listing data, as Gary from Realinflo was talking about. With regards to transactional data, so sales and purchase agreements, other than company share transfers, all of those are registered with the land registry. So you can have access to it. Whereas leasing data is typically not available. They sit with private agencies and private landlords. And for people to actually disrupt the market, you don't have access to this data to actually leverage. Similarly, with listing data, so available units, if you actually look at what's available online, it's a very small percentage to what agencies actually have in their inventory. Recently, one of our landlords had a unit vacant in a building, and if you look online, there's actually no vacancies available. But if through our relationships with agents over a period of time, we actually were informed that there are around 15 to 20 units vacant in that one building, which goes to show the big discrepancy with the data that's actually available online versus what's actually existing within the real estate community. So the next challenge is accuracy. As you have a lot of data, it's a huge challenge in terms of maintaining good data quality and data accuracy. Just to give you one example, a listing could potentially say that it's a 4-bedroom unit, but in reality, it could be 3 bedrooms with 1 helper room. And there's no real way to differentiate these kind of things. And there are a few different examples like that. The next one is completeness. So actually having a good amount of context in regards to your data. For this, I'll give you a quick example. So if you look at 2 units, right? One is $85,000 per month, It is 1,300 square feet, and it's in the mid-levels. The second unit, $74,000 a month, 1,450 square feet, and it's also in the mid-levels. It's clear, the price per square foot ratio, it makes much more sense to get the second unit. Now let's add a little bit more context to this. You're comparing high floor versus low floor. The number of bedrooms are different. The facilities available in the building are also very different. And lastly, the furniture and how it's set up is extremely different. One has high grade marble surround sound, whereas the other one is completely bare shell. So in reality, when you look at these transaction data, you don't necessarily have a lot of context in terms of what the real pricing is. In Hong Kong, pricing is typically done by comparables as opposed to discount and cash flow, which means that if you see a transaction listed as having transacted at say 74,000, how do you decide how to benchmark your unit necessarily? You're required to have a lot of assistance and guidance from people that are actively working in the industry. You can't really just use data for this. As you can see, this is about 7 different data points in terms of the dimensions of the data. You can keep on adding more and more dimensions. You can have feng shui, you can have the direction of the entrance. There's a lot of different context points that you can keep adding. And as you can see, this is in relation to the completeness of the data. Now let's bring in volume again. So when you add a lot of listings now, what ends up happening is you might be able to get a lot of listings, but your accuracy doesn't tend to be very high. You might get false data in the middle, unsanitized data. Mid-level East versus mid-level West are 2 completely different neighborhoods. So there's this, as you can see in this example, there's this strong trade-off between volume of data, how many data points you have, the number of attributes in regards to the data to actually give you a detailed perspective of what's happening. And if you can actually manage both of those, is your data actually accurate? How many holes and gaps do you have in your data? And these are some of the challenges where it comes to actually coming up with data insights. One of the things that I just want to mention is that there's a big difference between having a lot of data and big data. Most people think big data is just, okay, I've got a lot of, well, not binders or CDs, but maybe terabytes of information. And that constitutes big data. But in reality, that's just a lot of data. When we're bringing it back to big data, it's about actually creating insights. And can we have a positive feedback loop to improve the user experience for the end user? So in the context of big data, you obviously have this large data set, but you then have to go and clean all this data. You then go and analyze and try to generate potential insights and feedback. What you want to do is create a positive feedback loop so that the data quality constantly keeps increasing. You can improve the service for your customers. You can potentially lower the price. One of the biggest companies that does AI is Google, Facebook. And you can see their product has evolved quite significantly over the last 20 years, because as they're getting more data, they're constantly improving their product to be able to collect more data points. Before, you could only like Facebook posts, whereas now you can like, you can celebrate, you can love, I don't know, you can do a lot of things. And this goes across the industry. So if someone's telling you, look, I have a whole terabyte of data, that doesn't really mean anything unless you can actually come up with some insights for it. So one of the things I want to just leave you with is when you're entering the PropTech space, there are 3 main things to consider. Who? So who is your user? As I mentioned in the initial property market landscape, you've got a lot of different players in the market. So really try to identify who you're trying to solve a problem for. If you're a real estate professional, you typically will want to solve the problem for yourself, because you go into work Monday morning and you're like, why am I here? Why am I doing the same thing all the time? Just like Gary's story, you go in and you're like, all my friends are doing the same thing. I really need to change it. I really need to create some change in the industry. So the first thing, if you're a real estate professional who, if you're not like me, what I would suggest is just connecting with people in the real estate space. Obviously, PropTech Institute can help you with that. And really talking to them to understand which area really interests you. The second thing is the what. So what problem are you trying to solve? It's very important to be very specific in terms of what exact problem are you trying to solve? Are you trying to save people time? Are you trying to save people money? Are you trying to help people make more money? In reality, other than time and money, I don't know if a lot of people care about a lot of other things. So a lot of things end up coming down to that in some shape or form. But again, really specifying what problem you're trying to save is very important. The third point is how. So this is where your technical person will come in. Personally, maybe this is my background as a tech person. When there's terms like blockchain, AI, a lot of the times this kind of masks who the real user is. Blockchain is a tool to be used, but whether you use blockchain or not, honestly doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is, are your users happy? So I think one of the things just to keep in mind is, if the only thing that you hear is about blockchain, AI, VR, AR, all the buzzwords that you're going to come across, try to filter that out and really try to get to who are you trying to help and what is the problem you're trying to solve. And then always later on, whether you use blockchain or AR or VR, those are solutions that will keep iterating over a period of time. And I think that's something that you're going to have to get used to later, but it's not the first thing if you're trying to just step into the space. So that's all I have for you today. Feel free to reach out if you had any questions or if you'd like to connect with PropTech Institute. Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm back. May I now invite Gary and Vish back to the floor for some questions. Online right now. Should you have any questions, feel free to drop on the chat.
There is a question. After creating a solution, how do you price the solution to your clients? Methodology of pricing tech solutions.
Vish, do you want to go first?
Yeah, you could.
Vish?
Okay, so in the context of pricing a solution, what I would say is just try to understand how much value you think you're actually generating for the user. There's a good chance that your initial pricing won't necessarily be accurate. And it's okay to adjust your pricing. Google increased my Google Drive pricing from $5 to $6 a month. So it is possible for even smaller companies to adjust their pricing over a period of time. What I would say is, don't get bogged down by things like that. If it's really a blocker for you, just get started and then adjust over a period of time. I would say that, to be honest, I started my pricing a lot lower for our service. And then when we started getting a good amount of interest and people actually using and liking our product, retaining with us, we were able to increase our pricing and our users are still very happy. So don't get too focused down on product on pricing, in my opinion.
Yeah, kind of second that, and just say, you can also make reference to, kind of what others are charging as well. So, I kind of was working in the industry for a few years. So I knew how much, we were paying for other database platforms and other solutions. But it does become a bit more uncertain when you are starting to offer maybe something a bit different in the market. But that is a bit of, to be honest, it's a bit of trial and error. And once you talk to the client more, you really get to understand the value that you bring. That can help to determine the pricing as well.
Thank you, gentlemen. I have another one. So what kind of technical skills are most relevant to PropTech? Perhaps Gary, do you want to go first?
I mean, I could take that. I could take that too. So what I would say is, like I mentioned, the PropTech landscape is quite large. There's a lot of different areas that can be improved. In terms of actual things that need to be, so there's obviously being a software engineer, there's a front-end engineer, there's being a back-end engineer, data scientist. And what I would say is that actually all of them can be applied in some shape or form in the PropTech space. And again, I didn't learn coding in it by itself. I actually studied computer science as a degree in its entirety. So I feel like my experience with backend engineering actually helped me understand even data. And the most important thing that you learn from coding is you learn how to learn. So you learn how to improve over a period of time. If you're a backend engineer and you start getting documentation for a data platform, like NumPy on Python Jupyter Notebook or something like that, you can read the documentation, you learn how to figure it out. So I think obviously having a software engineering background does help because you can apply it to a lot of different industries. But data is actually a really big problem in the real estate space. And there are always a lot of people looking for data scientists nowadays. So yeah, I would say you can actually use both of them.
Great, learning how to learn. Yes. So Gary?
I think Vish pretty much covered that.
You can flip.
He's an expert, so it's
okay. Yeah. Thank you. So up next we have another one. What are the impacts that the COVID has on PropTech industry moving into 2021, and what can be done to take the advantage? So what are the impacts for COVID? And how we can leverage that to our advantage in the PropTech landscape.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too familiar what's going on, but just some of my ideas around this is, I think what COVID has done is, really shown us the need to have real-time data, and especially around, sometimes I go to some clients' offices now, and they're tracking things like air quality, like when it's been sanitized and stuff like that. And I think this kind of thing, like tracking real-time data, internally within the building and giving that assurance to your clients, your tenants, I think this will start to become, increasingly important. So I'm not sure what the solutions are at the moment, but for me, that's quite an interesting area, to look out for, I would say.
Yeah. So one of the things I would just add to that is there's two aspects of it. Like, what solutions can you create because of the COVID situation? As you can see, a lot of agents tend to use virtual touring videos of their units instead of actually taking their people on site. So there's that digital element to it. The second digital element is actually people being more receptive to adopting technology. If you spoke to any landlord a year ago and you told them, look, I can actually help you become more efficient, say in the context of building management and reducing costs with HVAC systems and stuff like that. If you told anybody, most people's response, at least the small to medium people, are like, look, I've made a lot of money in Hong Kong in the last 20 to 40 years. Like, are you going to save me a little bit? Is it really that helpful? But in reality, it's kind of been the market driving the prices up as opposed to real efficiency that's existing in the market. So now that the market has been disrupted a little bit, people realize that it's not just you buy and everything is always going to appreciate forever, right? So people's thought process has changed a little bit, and I would say the biggest thing I've realized is how people respond to you. It has changed. Yeah.
Actually, I got one more point just to add to that with what we're doing. So, we collect very granular information on the leasing market and around transactions. So what we actually did is start collecting like additional data points and tracking, for example, where tenants surrendering, what type of tenants are surrendering and, in response to the current situation. And I think that's something it's probably a bit more useful for, say, like asset managers and stuff, but you can also do things in your existing business, to.
So when there's a disruption,
yeah,
then what would be the data point represent?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So can you raise a couple of sample projects that you gentlemen has done in the past, and their implication and the impact to your clients or the feedbacks? So what sort of solution that you provided to them, to your clients? Can you give some sort of examples?
Sure. You want to go?
There you go.
Okay. So you're just asking what
Projects.
Projects or like what we do?
Particular projects from what we see. So any sample of your projects.
Sample. So you mean like features that we develop? Okay, sure. So I mean, some of the features, like one of the things that we developed recently with COVID, because some landlords were seeing some vacancies, is how do we more efficiently get listing data, quality listing data out to relevant agents. So building up a database of agents that we work with, being able to efficiently send out that data and being able to track which agents are engaging with us, which agents are scheduling on-site viewings, which agents are asking questions, which agents are, like, for example, if one agent asks, is it a pet-friendly apartment? You kind of want that information to also go out to other agents so that it reduces the back and forth. Is there a way that agents can just look up what you're doing, look up the availability without having to call you? Because when I was an agent, it was always like a bit challenging to say, I'm going to call the landlord every 2 days to check if your property is available. So we tried to offset that a little bit so that agents can check the relevant listings whenever they need it. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the recent things that we did in the past year.
Yeah, I guess just following on from what I said, the last question, we're currently working on, we're about to launch the next version of our platform. So we're currently looking at incorporating some of this, analysis on, responding to the latest changes in the market, say through additional dashboards in our platform. So that's something, we're about to launch very soon.
Okay, great. Sounds exciting. So I'm just cautious on the time. I'll take the last three, just so we could finish on time. So I think that this is more to you, Gary. So there are some property agencies databases providing price data access. What are your value add differences from these databases?
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, we really focus on collecting data and then connecting with different data points. So, collecting data you can't normally find in other databases, and then connecting that with other data sources to deliver, insights you can't normally get elsewhere. And I guess one key difference is what Vish mentioned is that we collect the leasing transaction data, which is not normally publicly registered in databases. So we actually have a crowd to do this. We crowdsource data from the market. So we crowdsource data from valuers, agents, and researchers. And this is a bit of a different method of collecting data in the market. And through this, we can show different insights to our users and through our platform.
Okay, and I think, yeah.
One thing, I know this question was for Gary, but I've seen some of these platforms that agencies use. There was one, I think it was called Unicorn, and it looked like I went back into 1998 or something like that. So what I would say is, obviously there's the data aspect. If you're actually interested in this thing, looking at a demo or looking at a video, I think, will immediately make you understand what the difference between things that were built 20, 30 years ago and what is actually in the market right now.
Yeah. So to the audience, I see some specific questions that you're asking. We were very happy to answer them, but those we'll jot it down for you, and then we can have us to touch base with you. So something about business models and all that. So I think some general question, and this probably would be the last one, is that what kind of skill or knowledge in tech that you require if they were to enter the prop tech landscape or scene? What would you recommend? Or what would you suggest? Skill, technical side of things. Just in general.
Yeah. You want to take
Fish?
Okay, so skills if you're looking to enter the prop tech landscape, I think it depends. If you're looking to get into a technical skill, then having the ability to maybe understand web applications, data processing pipelines, data cleaning pipelines, how web applications work, so backend versus front end, APIs, authentication. I'm just saying a bunch of random buzzwords, but basically really because the thing is that it is not a very developed industry, right? So the people that you'll be working with, not everybody necessarily has a really strong technical grasp of what is happening. So if you can really understand these concepts from the ground up, and the reality is if you're starting a new venture, your product is going to change quite a lot over a period of time. And if you understand these concepts well enough, you will be able to adapt your product with your users' updates and stuff like that. So if you're going to do like a software engineering program, then not just a superficial level of I was able to create a page with a form that sent me an email, but really understanding when you fill out this form, where does it go? Really going into the nitty gritty so that when you can apply that knowledge to many different circumstances in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Gary?
Yeah, I would say like around the knowledge part, I would say having that domain expertise or that industry knowledge in the particular area that you want to build out your prop tech, your startup on. I think that is like absolutely critical. I think if you want to build, a platform for agents, and you don't have any experience, just go and be an agent, for 1 year or 2 years. Or if you want to, build out a platform for, for valuers, for example, you really need that deep understanding, because you can say, okay, I have an idea, but once you really get into it, your idea is going to keep changing. For example, even what we're doing will look quite different, 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, and having that really deep knowledge of the industry, area that you've got experience in, it comes in so valuable later on. When you need to make changes and when you're also understanding like your client's needs. I think.
Right. So being practical as well. As well as having that idea on solving problems.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen. So to the audience online, we will be sending out a thank you email. So then we will have the contacts of the gentleman here on any questions that we could answer later on. So in closing, we want to thank again Gary and Fish on speaking today, and we will invite now Darren Wong of PTI to send some closing remarks.
So hey everyone, I'm Darren, one of the co-founder of the team. I'll take the chance to thank everyone here from Eden Club, Accelerate, our team together that make this event happen. And most importantly is really you guys, the audience, because without you guys being part of it, our work would not be like today, understanding what PropTech really means, what the real estate needs help, and how you get part of it. For us is that we always understand that real estate is a very interesting industry. There's a really wide range from industrial, residential, from land, from everything in the whole world need real estate. And then now is a very interesting time whereby everyone are inviting you guys to be part of it, from technical background, creatives, or all walks of life can be part of it. please keep in touch. We have a lot of amazing events coming up next year. And then you can sign up to us, our email list or social media, and then stay tuned to us. And then thanks again for being part of it. Thanks.